Hi, everyone. I'm Shweta Pai. Thank you so much for joining here. I am just a quick intro to my background. I am a 20-year FP&A veteran. I have worked in the field across a lot of different types of FP&A, if you will. I've led corporate FP&A functions, most recently for a $11 billion healthcare company, but also for a $3 billion manufacturing company. And then I've also been in FP&A in businesses, as well as in the business unit level, as well as I've straddled into operations or corporate strategy and corporate development, M&A, throughout my career. I spent quite a lot of my career as well in investment banks, and I've also run I co-founded and ran a tech startup for 5 years. So I have a fairly broad background, but FP&A has been a kind of the common thread throughout a lot of it. It was my first job out of undergrad, and kind of continued and stayed with me throughout. And it's a function that I feel very passionate about. I really enjoy it. I find it to be an extremely dynamic place to be within an organization, certainly within finance, within the finance umbrella, but also within the organization as a whole. And the most exciting part of finance for me, especially FP&A, is that we are in this unique position where we use data, financial metrics and financial data to help really the executive leaders really shape and validate their strategy. We can help give shape to a company's vision using FP&A and using the financial data that we gather. We can also validate the strategic objectives and strategic goals that have been set out. One of my favorite exercises that I do often with companies, both large and small, definitely the companies where I lead FP&A, has been this concept of working out what the 5-year plan looks like, and then working backwards to what your budget really should be for the next year. So you look at where you want to be in 5 years. What are those key kind of financial metrics that you have laid out, and then say, okay, if I have to get there in year 5, here's where I need to be in year 4. This can be achieved through just quick kind of growth metrics for a lot of these line items. But then you can also say, if I'm going to sell X, Y, and Z amount in year 4, here's the kind of investment I need by year 3. So that means I need to have these things done in order to show that return or to raise that funding, and then work backwards to, okay, what do I need to do in year 2? And oh, by the way, that means that next year, here are the very detailed line items that I need to focus on, and the decisions and the roadmap that I need to work on. One of the big things that I also, as part of my process that I look at, and I'm constantly, reminding a lot of my peers, as well as any clients that I have throughout my consulting practice, has been the fact that budgets are roadmaps to achieving your strategy, and your forecasts, your quarterly, monthly, however frequent you do it, are often your prediction of how well you will hit those targets that you have to hit in order to achieve that long-term vision. But to be clear, the targets don't come from budget. Budget is your roadmap to get to the targets. The targets have to be tied to your 3 to 5 or 7 year, whatever timeline you choose, but that strategic plan, it has to be tied. Your targets have to be tied to those strategic plans, those strategic goals, and that vision of where you want the company to be. So this is, and these kind of conversations and this exercise is what motivates me, what I like the best about FP&A. One of the big things that I wanted to also share here, especially in a forum like what we have today around automation, is what are some of the best practices that I'm seeing across specifically hyper growth companies, and what are those trends to be on the lookout for, and how are they helping? I just want to highlight 4 key trends and best practices that I've seen that have come up throughout the years, and I'm open to hearing more. Anybody can find me on LinkedIn. It's Shweta T Pai. My last name is spelled Pai. So feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out on any of the via the forum itself here. And I would love to have a conversation about this. But here are the 4 key trends that I'm seeing as far as growth and automation, process improvement within the FP&A function. One of the first ones is around data integration. Now, as a lot of FP&A people know, this is often the big challenge that we have within this function, is that we are receivers of data. We don't necessarily create data ourselves. We get data from all the different parts within the corporation. And oftentimes it's extremely disparate. Even financial data can come in disparate. Different parts of the organization could be using different line items or different account codes differently. There could be, for an international or a global organization, different country GAAP could impact how certain accounts are being used, and now you need to normalize for that. You also see a lot of different timings around this data, and that's just the financial data. FP&A, the thing that makes and drives this FP&A engine and really helps you understand the organization, is melding financial data with operational data, and now these can come in all shapes and form. And that's where a lot of our challenge, a lot of our time and energy gets saved up. But what I've seen, a lot of the best practices, best practice in this field has been data integration, system integration, not for FP&A, but for the platforms that are used on operations and within finance. The minute we have, a lot of companies are going cloud-based, which has been amazing for something like this, because now you can make sure that the data is somewhat, at least the building blocks of that data are standard. We can also use we've also seen different things around just platforms talking to each other and taking feeds in from different ones, integrating them before feeding them into FP&A. That is by far the number one time saver, best practice, and it also it helps you feed into a lot of the other things like predictive analytics that we'll talk about as best practice, the other trends. But this is the number one trend, and even if you don't do any of the others, this is the one that I would say one of the big things would be to focus on: integrating a lot of your financial and operational data, having these systems talk to each other as much as possible, or having a tool that sits in between, translates them, captures the data, translates it, and has an output that's standardized in some way, normalizes data for different gap standards, or normalizes data for just different operational standards that they may have. So we have that's number one big best practice. The number two best practice that I've seen quite a bit, and it's been really exciting, has been the use of AI and the use of machine learning and AI. Different companies have been using this at different kind of stages, but machine learning and AI to drive really the predictive modeling. And this predictive modeling can be really, because of the power of these models, these machine learning models and the AI models, we can now, what I've seen has been the data can be used and can be actually predictive at the most detailed level, at an account level. We can tie in a lot of the operational metrics into and say, this is what is this one operational metric is actually running this one line item, and we can map that. Whereas in the past, what, as anybody who's done FP&A before or does FP&A now, as everybody knows, our predictive modeling has existed for as long as FP&A has existed. And I've seen it, I've worked on it for all 20 years of my career. But one of the key things that that used to happen, that doesn't happen with these big models now, which has been exciting, has been in the past, the predictive models were often you had to make high level assumptions on one or two, or maybe one or two big drivers for a given line item. You used an abbreviated P&L to begin with to do any of your modeling, because you could never get down to the detail because it was often too complex. And then, even then, you were using one or two drivers to drive that one line item. When we all know any one of the line items, any one of the accounts, there are often multiple drivers behind it. Even something as simple as marketing costs could have different drivers depending on what kind of marketing is being done, where the marketing is being done, how often it's being done. All of these can be feed into what drives your marketing costs. And we can have, but we had to make high-level assumptions and just apply the 80-20 rule, which I'm a massive proponent of. I definitely don't think that precision equals accuracy. But one of the things that we had to live with was making decisions knowing we had imperfect information. While precision may not drive accuracy, the level of detail within the data and the analytical models that the machine learning and AI can provide, what that does is it reduces that uncertainty. Instead of the 80-20 rule, now you're looking at 95-5 rule. And there's always going to be uncertainty around any of these predictive tools, but lowering the chances that your variables are off can help you at least make sure that you have a better tool to make your decisions. And because at the end of the day, that's what we're really doing, is making decisions for the future of the company, steering that ship. Which way do we go? The more information you have that is relevant, and the better distilled it is, the more precise your decision can be. So that's the second big trend that I've seen. The third big trend that and best practices that I've seen is increased frequency and speed of doing your forecasts and updates to budget as necessary. Now, going back to the kind of level set for what is a budget, what is a forecast, while we have budget ends up being your roadmap on what kind of decisions to make to achieve your goal, your targets specifically. Forecasts are often, well, how are you doing? How did that decision work out? Is your ship that you're steering going the way that you wanted to go because you said to make a right turn instead of a left, or you decided to go straight? Is that now going the way that you needed to go? That's what the forecast does. Now, the more frequent you have these forecasts, these predictive kind of tools to check and validate that you're going in the right direction, the better your decisions around will be. And also, one of the big things has been speed. The data integration, as well as the predictive nature of doing these models, has helped us also get a lot of speed incorporated. So because the predictive models will give us an output on what they think the forecast will be, all we have to do is really tweak a little bit on some of the key known assumptions, and we can start tweaking them the more often we do them. So it's a self-fulfilling kind of process where the more often we do it, the more we can tweak the assumptions, the better. The more we tweak the assumptions, the better the result becomes. But and we can also do this because the speed of the turnaround helps us do this fast and check, hey, is this actually driving the result that I want? Or no, I think this is the key driver, not this item. So you can actually make those changes if you can do your FP&A process faster, more frequently. The fourth key best practices that I've seen in the FP&A field, especially as it relates to automation, has been, for me, the most exciting part, partly because of my varied background. I enjoy FP&A, but I also love that we are moving towards being XP&A, not FP&A. So it's applying the same rigor, the same discipline, the same kind of timing, the data gathering, the analytical powers, applying that to other functions, be it operations or HR, for workforce planning, or any other function, to apply that planning and analysis kind of mindset for other functions has been really interesting. But again, that becomes possible because we've invested in a lot of the automation, a lot of the data integration, predictive analytics. We're doing this well enough that we know how this model works. We can tweak it on the go, make it very responsive, and really build out a very agile, responsive FP&A organization that can then transfer to be not just finance. And those are really the biggest and most exciting trends that I've seen within this field as I've gone across. And what I enjoy the most about the automation and the promise of automation is expanding FP&A to be not just finance, to be enterprise-wide, to be XP&A. Thank you very much. Happy to chat further. Please reach out at any point. Thank you.